Good morning and welcome to NeoConnect 2020. NeoConnect is NeoCon's online series of resources, programming, and events held throughout the month of June. I'm Monica DiBartolo, NeoCon's Program Director, and I want to thank you for joining us. Today's session is approved for 1 CEU credit for interior designers and 1 LU credit for architects. It is also being recorded so you can access it on demand. Please refer to your screen for more details. So let's begin. Today's session is titled Survival of the Fittest 2.0, Embracing and Thriving While Reimagining Everything. With new technologies disrupting industries faster than ever before, we're faced with finding a balance between thriving in the now and continuously reinventing ourselves and our organizations. This program will discuss the why and how to master current demands while anticipating and planning for future innovation in an innovate or die world. Our speakers are from Little Diversified Architectural Consulting, Inc. in Charlotte, North Carolina. Tomás Jiménez Eliasson is a partner and design principal for the firm's community practice. Originally from Spain, Tomás is focused on projects that fuse typological redefinitions and environmentally conscious design with leading-edge technology and innovation. He has written about the immersive learning scape in regard to education and is also researching a number of areas, including the relationship and connectivity between learning and workplace. Tomás is a frequent presenter at national and international conferences, including the AIA Conference on Design, NeoCon, A4LE International Conference, Innovate Conference in Brazil, and ASB Unplugged in India. Jim Thompson is a partner and design principal in Little's workplace practice, specializing in shaping workplace environments. An award-winning designer with 20 years of experience, Jim has been the senior designer on much of the firm's workplace projects in the United States and China. He has served as a guest critic, juror, design mentor, and teacher, and is on the advisory board of 2 design schools. Jim has been published in numerous national publications, was a contributor in the book Future Office, and is a featured presenter at national conferences, including the National AIA Conference, NeoCon, NeoCon East, and Coronet. Please welcome Tomás Jiménez Eliasson and Jim Thompson.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
All right.
And hopefully everybody can hear me okay. Hopefully everybody can see the presentation on the screen. And thank you again, Monica. Thank you, NeoCon, for hosting us today. We're honored to be able to do this presentation. We're excited about it. We think the timeliness of it is fantastic. And wow, you know what the last 4 months have brought to us, and how we are trying to all struggle and hustle with all this new world that we're dealing with, from COVID to social justice. There's so many changes happening immediately right now. So that we believe the title of our presentation today is Survival of the Fittest, and what we need to be comfortable being very uncomfortable right now is very appropriate to what we want to do. JT and I, both of us, have our contact info below, as you can see on the cover. And if you do wish to follow up with us after this, please feel free to do so. And we're excited to share today's presentation. Let's see. So we'd like to do a little bit of an agenda for today. What we're looking at as first, we're going to talk about what are the challenges to innovation and how we created the new while optimizing the existing, some type of balance that we're trying to do. So that will be a second chapter. That's kind of how we strike this balance of being innovative, but also being resilient, right? And maintaining what we do every day to pay for that innovation. Third, we'll talk about how we craft an innovative biome, how we created this transformative engine in each of us and in each of our organizations. And fourth is we're going to show you a little bit how we are doing it. This is a little bit of an introspective into some of the things we are doing, how we're taking in that process. If we were to be together, we will be asking you these three questions. How innovative is your organization from being a very innovative to being a laggard? And how innovative is your team with the same questions? And how innovative are you? And those are three very, very, very different questions that we believe, and we'll show you this later, they all have a repercussion on the process of innovation, whether you're working in a team, in a company, or by yourself. And also, just it's intriguing to me that we can look at linguistics, and when you look at in Chinese, the word crisis, it's meant to state that there is a partial component of danger to it, but there's also a component of opportunity. And both JT and I believe that jumping into this new world that we're in, the opportunities are tremendous out there. Not without fear, but we do need to approach the world in a way that we think of it in terms of the opportunities, and that's applicable to all of us in the industry. So I'm going to let JT move on to this chapter.
All right. So Monica introduced me as Jim Thompson. Tomas will reference JT. So feel free to use either in questions or follow up. So we really talk about what are the challenges to innovation, and really sort of looking back to the characters of the idea of danger and trepidation, but really the opportunity in that. And we truly believe in times of crisis, it's probably the opportunity for greatest innovation, and that innovation to be as disruptive as the crisis that hopefully bears those ideas and opportunities. But again, it's a watershed moment. We're reading and trying to look for those opportunities. And McKinsey & Company has been a great place, and there's going to be many others that we reference, whether it's articles or books. But appreciate what McKinsey says, and through COVID and this crisis, they're a suggestion: don't look backwards. Things are happening and changing so quickly. Either read today or tomorrow's writings and thought leadership. But this was a great article, and this came out in June. This month earlier, but they really talked about innovation in a crisis and why is it more critical than ever, and really how do you begin to prioritize what that means. And really they share, and it really helped the way I begin and Tomas begin to think about really a crisis as an ingredient for truly disruption. And they give, if you want to read it, it's online, but they really talk about what those opportunities may be, but most importantly, taking it back to business and what that means in terms of business leaders and executives, a lot of our clients, and again, business owners. But 90% really believe, in terms of executives, that this crisis will fundamentally change the way they do business over the next 5 years. At the same time, 85% are concerned that the crisis will have lasting impact on their business and their customer businesses, and that's the filter we're looking at. But at the same time, they feel ill-equipped to begin to face this challenge, with only 21% feeling they have the expertise or the resources, or ultimately, and we'll talk about this in a moment, the commitment to pursue new growth successfully and what the strategies around that might mean. And 2 out of 3 of these executives believe that this will be the most challenging moment in their executive career. So there's a lot riding on this. And really, we want to show perhaps what it's meant through times of crisis. Again, from McKinsey, they looked at really the S&P 500 and Fast Company's world's 50th most innovative companies. And the next slide is going to talk about really these 8 essentials to innovation that McKinsey's put out, which is a roadmap, a true north to beginning to be smart about how do you come out of things like this. But the point they were showing there was really this exponential sort of delta between those in the S&P and those through crisis innovators, and what that means. Through crisis, the 2008-2009, with the financial crisis, they were still plus 10%, and up to 2013-14, it was in the range of plus 30%. So there's something of meaning if people are willing to embrace that and just think about what the opportunity is born from something like this. Sorry, Tomas, you can go forward. And what those 8 essentials of innovation are really talks about these critical practices with the greatest impact for innovation. And there's 8 of those, and they explain what those begin to do in terms of targets that reflect how do you create innovation-led growth, initiatives, resource to win, to mobilize. So really a front to back. And they begin to prioritize, and what was really interesting about this was published a number of years ago, but this is Aspire and Choose at the time were the most pertinent and important during what they called broad economic stability. And again, to aspire to sort of embrace an innovation-led growth strategy, and to begin to choose those initiatives that are resourced to win and to invest down in those. But within a crisis like one that's unprecedented, like we're hopefully coming out of soon, they reprioritize those, and they talked about really discover and evolve, and how you expect innovation-led growth and targets to be really front and center. So, what is the value proposition? How do you differentiate around customers, businesses? How do you talk to them and understand truly what their needs are? And then how do you evolve and really create business models that are robust, scalable, they're profitable, and ultimately you choose then what initiatives are resourced to win, and you begin to invest smartly around those things.
And as we talk about evolve, when one of the comments they talk about is that what we need is our dreamers and doers at the same time. So obviously holding on to people that are both great, but in this moment, it's really about thinking like a startup. It's about action over research. It's about testing over analysis. It's about coming up with quick ideas and testing very fast to make sure that they bring the value that is necessary to push all of us forward. I want to talk 1 second about, in the words of Sir Ken Robinson, one of the leading voices in education, a quick differentiation in terminology, because imagination, it's what we all think about. It's kind of these ideas that pop up in our heads and that make us feel like we have this wonderful thing we can do. But creativity is when you actually put that into action, when you actually do something with it. You craft something new, you make something new with that imagination. But then there is a differentiation within those two and innovation. Innovation is when you actually do something that takes hold in the marketplace. The marketplace is the one that decides whether your creativity is valuable or not. And that's what we're talking about today. It's this innovation. But innovation is not easy, as we all know. It's not an easy button that we can press. And it's something that we have to work in and out. And we're going to talk a little bit about that process, right? And especially in this incredibly difficult world that we're dealing with right now, and the idea of predicting change, which is becoming much, much harder to do. We're all thrown into this tailspin right now. So I think we'd like to highlight this graph, which was created by Nigel Cameron with the Center for Policy's Emerging Technologies. But it's the key of this, and there's a lot of info here, but it's that we have, as humans, very limited ability to see the future, and our ability to predict the future is so limited that what you can see is a change in kind of a graph of change in time. And for us, it's kind of understanding that, oh, if I can just get till next mark deadline or next mark, I'll be fine after that. So it's kind of the solid red line that you start to see. If I'm here, I'll be fine because the future is not going to change that much. But if we learn something through COVID and all the exposure through TV of COVID, is that it's an exponential change. And exponential change happens as well with all the technology that we're living with. So it's understanding that we don't know, but we need to be prepared for that exponential change that is important and not be hindered by our limitations of what we cannot see yet. One book that we'd like to share with you is from Vijay Govindarajan. It's a mouthful, but it's called the 3-Box Solution, and it's about a strategy for leading innovation. And he talks really about the balance of managing the current situation while also managing the future. And for that to happen, there has to be an ambidexterity concept idea, that the managerial style for maintaining and optimizing what we're doing today is very different from the managerial imperatives of what we need to do for tomorrow. And we need to be simultaneously doing so. For that, he touches on what he calls a 3-box solution, which is pretty important. First one is, how do we optimize what we do today? How do we become better, faster, cheaper with the workload, the things that we have today? But we also need to immediately be thinking selectively about how we have abandoned the things that are no longer valuable or are losing value in the marketplace, while investing on box 3, kind of how do we create the future? And in a typical scenario, you could think some companies will be on the 50% box 1 to 20% to 30%, or in some organizational percentages. But it seems very much that we need to be very fastly thinking about selectively abandoning the past, because the world is changing so much that investing in the future is going to be even more imperative and important than ever.
And from Vijay's book, we looked at and explored what he calls these 3 traps that prevent innovation. And really, it goes back to reverting to what we know and doubling down sometimes on what that means, and having cultures that really sort of are proponents of that, versus, which is the next slide, which breaks this down, which are these 3 traps being really about complacency. And again, you know what you know. And again, this crisis in particular is unprecedented. It's hard to have any predictive knowledge or reference to know what it means coming out of it, based on not even knowing where we are within it. But it creates misplaced confidence, he calls it. And that's really an unclear understanding as to what's happening today and how the world is potentially and exponentially changing around you. So his point is, get your head up and look not at the horizon, but perhaps look beyond the horizon. The second trap, he talks about the cannibalization trap, and we know things that are linear. We can understand those. That's kind of the normative model. We understand one thing leads to the other, but a lot of what's happening now is nonlinear, and those ideas, if we can't embrace those, jeopardize the firm's potential prosperity and your clients as well. Sometimes it helps to talk to those clients and ask what they're needing. But the thought from Steve Jobs is, if you can't cannibalize or consider that for yourself, someone else will do it to you. So everyone's in this race to come out, not necessarily on top, but certainly and hopefully better. And that's what our goal is in sharing this, that we want that for everyone. And the final trap is the competency trap, that you built your whole organization on executing and creating not only business models, but models in terms of processes that you've seen and had success in. So we're looking at, unfortunately, going back to that first box in managing the present. You're doubling down, and you're really looking at realizing that past success, and that may last, a number of years. But the point is that the world is changing, and it's doing so more quickly than imaginable. And if we can't put our head up a little bit and start thinking about creating the future, not only does your company become potentially not necessarily relevant, but maybe not relevant's a better word, but the employees and their skill set becomes a reflection of that as well.
So I think the idea, obviously, with this lack of seeing and complacency and the kind of understanding of change, is that we need to feel uncomfortable, and that's the way for us to progress. Is where magic happens. It's not in not in our comfort zone, but in our stretch zone. And for that, we need to become uncomfortable. And we also need to combat reluctance. JT touched on this a little bit, but pre-COVID, we have examples of companies that basically were destroyed because they couldn't see past the today. Kodak with the digital format, Nokia with smartphones, Blockbuster with streaming video. But just during COVID, these are 5 companies that are worldwide that have gone under. Various reasons, various industries. But the reality is that they may not have been nimble enough to adapt to this change. So who's coming next, right? And we need to embrace that. We need to embrace the change and kind of pull forward. But there's also a risk, right? There's this fallacy that we need to be thinking innovatively, and therefore we need to be thinking about the next big thing. And the next big thing is not necessarily there. It doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be a thing. It could be a service. And it may not be next either. It may be later. So we need to be timing ourselves and thinking that small incremental moments can be extremely beneficial rather than thinking of this mega innovation that we're looking at.
And we're looking again at striking a balance, and what are the two sides of the innovation coin. And the next series of slides, hopefully everyone has some familiarity with again some of the images you're seeing here. But again, the thought, and certainly in the past, that innovation cultures are depicted as fun. There are differentiators, certainly not only in the environments, but the people and the leadership they're showing. And a lot of the characteristics that we know and we see, and again, we try to understand and embrace, is really a tolerance for failure. Again, going back to innovation and innovative cultures and organizations, willingness to experiment, to get out of bounds. Psychologically, it's safe. So, it's not only expected, but there's a level of protection there. It's highly collaborative. And it's lots of times in terms of an organization, it's flat, non-hierarchical. But at the same time, it's balanced with the other side of the coin. With tolerance for failure, there's no tolerance for incompetence. So there's some gutters there that help us understand what it means to be in these organizations. Highly disciplined people, to have a safe environment, but one that allows for brutal candor. And that's moving quickly towards the opportunity to be agile and bring ideas to the table. Highly collaborative, but individually have accountability, and ultimately strong leadership is necessary. And we've seen these, some of the most touted innovators, obviously with Google, with Apple, with Amazon. They're progressive. They have certainly more success than they do failures, but those failures they're learning from. And just a few examples of those. The idea that organizations set exceptionally high performance standards for their people, the idea of no tolerance for incompetence, and it starts top to bottom. Hopefully you meet somewhere between, but there's no tolerance for poor management, certainly bad work habits or sloppy habits or thinking, and your skill set needs to be honed and forever relevant. And it's interesting just looking at some models, the idea of this Amazon employees, and just again looking at what it means to be in their organization an average performer, below average, above average, and then the top 20% they call their top performers, and then the non-performers in this 10% really are those they look at and continually cull. They're looking and always moving towards creating the average, if not above, and top performer. So there's a certain intolerance for mediocrity, which is really interesting. And Google's another interesting thing to look at. And you just look at these staggering numbers where it's 2 million applicants, 5,000 positions, but the odds are 400 to 1 that you would have a position there. But when they're looking at their top 10%, it's really not thinking they're non-performers, but perhaps they're just ill-placed, that there's a better place for their skill set. So they're looking at not letting someone go in robust times, but looking at the fit may be better elsewhere. So I think it's just looking at people and being thoughtful there. To experiment with highly disciplined people is the understanding that, sure, anything can be justified, but the discipline to move forward quickly, to modify, to kill an idea, that takes courage and maturity, but it allows you to move on to try new things and to learn from those that perhaps didn't work. To always experiment, but know that doesn't necessarily mean it's always casual, that it's balanced with the right and the left brain. And being able to understand kind of the creative with a hat that's more of the judge than the artist. And to be brutally you have brutal candor in an environment that's safe. The thing, if you're not able to do that, to debate others' ideas, to raise counter perspectives and thoughts, to bring hopefully what is your best, and that best hopefully is a level of diversity of thought and experience. If you don't allow for that, innovation will be crushed. You can't even get out of the seat, much less to bear a solution or an idea that can impact your clients. And when it comes to innovation, it's a two-way street. And in terms of who will outperform the other, the one that sort of embraces these will win every time. And that goes back to, I think, what McKinsey was showing in that S&P and in the 50 most innovative companies from Fast Company. And individual accountability, again, it goes back to the culture and to understand and really embrace that it's not about building consensus. They talk about it's poison for rapid decision making. That if everyone's accountable to one another, feels safe to make decisions, thoughts, contribute, begins to be truly transformational, and everyone feels a level of ownership. And again, the ability to move quickly, to pivot, always moving in a direction that hopefully has been defined, but is squishy enough to morph and change as necessary. And the last thing you would do is to shut yourself off from feedback. So always be open and have a culture and organization that allows for that, to even reach out to, in times like this, your clients, to the community, and understand the problems they're facing and how your organization may be a complement to that, or really a driver to a solution, or to find the back door that really makes the difference. And strong leadership. Again, in culturally flat organizations, you have a lot of latitude, the ability to have a voice, hopefully opinions, and ultimately the leadership that really embraces that and allows for that to happen. Sometimes stepping aside and really looking at performance and top performers that may bring something, especially now, that is not only needed, but could truly surprise and redefine who your organization may become. But that doesn't mean necessarily a lack of leadership. So importantly now is to understand some of those things as to what does it mean to lead, not necessarily manage. And sometimes that leadership may not be defined as traditional, and just to be thoughtful and smart about any excessive tendencies in all of us.
So, as we move into the third chapter is the how-to almost of crafting this innovation biome. How do we kind of create this transformative engine out of our companies, out of our institutions? And a great book, strongly recommended, The Innovation Biome by Kumar Mehta. But it talks about the biome as a place that provides the settings and conditions that determine what flourishes and what dies. And the innovation biome is a corporate environment that lets innovation flourish. So he's looking at a biomimicry, and in a way, the kind of paralleling the world of a biome, which is a special environment that provides some macro conditions for certain systems of life to exist, to mimic that, to mirror that into what a corporate environment or institutional environment could be like. So in his quote, if the goal is to make innovation a replicable and consistent activity, then it is important for companies to understand how to get better at improving ourselves. So it's kind of a system. It's a ecosystem that allows that. And JT touched on many of them in terms of leadership, in terms of the role of the individual, in terms of the culture of place. But he also touches on 5 steps that we would like to share with you guys in terms of crafting that innovation biome. The first one is obviously an innovative culture. And that means that there has to be 3 levels to it. And we kind of touched on this earlier, but we need individuals to be innovative. We need teams to be innovative. And we need organizations at the leadership levels to be innovative. They make the case that if any one of these is innovative, you're hindering tremendously the opportunity of a process to be innovative. So keeping that in mind, how can we, all of us, have a role in the innovation process? Two is really about solving real needs, right? It's back to that idea of innovation is about bringing value to the marketplace. And this is an example, for example, that Zoom all of a sudden, which was obviously was a teleconferencing kind of tool for everybody, but out of nowhere becomes the most downloaded app in the universe. And not only that, it goes beyond the value that we can connect digitally, but it, for example, starts to look at features specifically for educators because they understand how the educators work. That is bringing value to a cause, and that is listening to a project, to a group of potential users and understanding how the tool can be tweaked to make it better for them. So it starts with, in a way, listening. And then kind of executing on three types of innovation. And I think all of us should try to plan for all of those three. The first one, obviously, is incremental. This is what we do every day. We're furniture manufacturers. We try to make the furniture better, faster, cheaper, more sustainable. You're a computer manufacturer, you try to make it larger, faster, again. We do architecture, we do the same thing, right? So incremental, every time we get better at what we do. Second is more breakthroughs, when we start to really shift the mindset of the marketplace. And this is kind of in a way where we are today, trying to find where we are breakthroughs. There are breakthroughs in our industries to be able to move farther into that process. But what he talks about is really the experiential. And the second, the breakthrough allowed the experiential to occur. But the experiential is really about changing our lives. It's how we take our pain points and through, for example, apps, we can truly change the way we do business, we communicate, we talk to other people, we grab a cab, we see movies. And these were the top 10 about a few months ago, but after during COVID, Zoom and Netflix have jumped to 1 and 3, I believe, on this list of most downloaded of all time, just because of the new conditions we're kind of set in. I'd also like to touch 1 second on the approach. Here's from Peter Lee, from Microsoft Research Chief, but he talks at Microsoft, Microsoft Research, MSR. We ask each lab director to make sure that his or her research portfolio covers all quadrants of the innovation map. Some that are mission focused, some that are sustained research, some that are disruptive, some are blue sky. And they even have a graphic that goes with it, which we love because it starts to talk about our mindsets having to be occupying the various quadrants. They are from reactive to what's happening today to much more open-ended. And therefore, short-term, what are we going to do today to deal with these COVID issues, to long-term sustaining kind of innovation. So it requires all of us, and they require leaders, all of leaders, to be thinking on 4 quadrants. And I think that's a really important suggestion from Microsoft. And also to start thinking about at what point is science fiction not science fiction anymore? You know, when is AI part of what we do? And how can we imagine things that are not, you know, out there? It sounds like they're out there, but they're not out there anymore. And then step 4, which is altering really experiences. Again, going back to that third type of innovation, it's how do you augment your customer's experience? Where do you find the pain points in the process of doing something, and how can we minimize a pain point through our innovation, through our kind of ideas, right? So take, for example, the idea of a taxi experience versus an Uber experience. Uber looked at that diagram, and they looked at that experience delta and the pain points. So imagine this gentleman is in a restaurant, it's raining, and he needs to go out to grab a cab, wave it. A few of them pass by, he's getting wet. He comes in, and finally, very wet, has to tell the cab driver where he needs to go, or she. And then when he gets to the destination, he has to pay, has to get out his wallet, and then finally finish that experience. Versus the Uber experience, where he's in the restaurant, he maps it, Uber comes, he doesn't need to get wet, he can run straight into the cab, he doesn't have to think about pulling his wallet. Again, it's a completely different experience, and that's kind of why they're so successful. So how can that apply, that thinking, to our own industries and how we work within our industries to minimize those pain points in our clients' experiences? And then kind of 5 is really understanding innovation, the attributes of innovation. The first one we would say is priming, and priming yourself, priming your company to be ready for that moment when that learning or that knowledge can be applicable to the problem. We should have been priming ourselves from day one, early on, right, for this. So we knew it was coming at some point. Hopefully we were doing that, so it wasn't, we weren't caught off guard, even though the situation obviously is crazy. But at a corporate environment or institutional environment, we look at it in terms of continuous learning, just never stop learning, exposure to inquiries, as you see here at the D School in Stanford, poised everywhere in the D School walls, so that the people can support ideas through writing. Asynchronous crowdsourcing of source answers. Again, anybody can come and see these questions and write answers to them. So make your environment, whether it's digital or physical, a place where answers and that kind of voices can be heard. The idea of continuous sharing of ideas among everybody, intelligence as well, and obviously brainwriting. We've moved on to doing sessions with our clients through group map. So we can spend, instead of brainstorming, we spend time, sit some time, an hour, writing answers to questions that are posed. The second is really about acceptance and not falling on the trap of Kodak, that knew that the SLR camera was coming, the digital film was coming, and they decided to put their heads down like an ostrich and not look into what that would mean for the industry, even though it was one of their employees, the one that invented it. So they completely missed the mark by not being a good listener even to their internal staff. And obviously network developments, that the innovations don't happen in a silo and they're connected to other things too. A great example is this idea of transdisciplinarity and the idea that we need to be connecting knowledge across disciplines, and we don't have the discipline in-house. Find those partners in the industry that can help support your thinking and your progress if you kind of fulfill that internally. But start to think more about how all these things, these ecosystems, how to solve these challenges are not dealt with by disciplinary thinking, but by transdisciplinary thinking, which is a very different mindset. And then obviously the idea of clustering value. So a great example of that is Tesla, right? And when you think of Tesla, it's really about inventing a powerful battery that can then be part of a new car, but a new car that needs to be stopping in places. So the idea that now we need to invent a next level of innovation, which is this kind of recharging stations. And how does that happen in a plan, right? How does that happen in a map that we can start to create? And then all of a sudden, these charging stations can become more than just a charging station. What if they become restaurants? They can become stores, as the Tesla starts to think. So what becomes an innovation, which is a battery, has repercussions as you start to scale it up, that are continuous moments of innovation. And then obviously, and not to be understated, is the catalytic environment. We cannot compare what's happening in the US with what's happening in Africa or Europe right now. Geographically, socio-political conditions have a huge impact on how we think about innovation, and there are various markets. So what may not work for you here may actually work really well in a different market. So being in tune on those differences, it's pretty important and critical.
Thanks, Tomas. We thought as well that important to talk about some of the things that we're testing and doing. So to bring all these lessons home, a lot of that is to find where the relevance is for ourselves and our organization, and importantly for our clients as well. So we're looking at, Tomas, you can move forward, is how can we increase innovation within our organization? And that begins back to that diagram that Tomas showed earlier, but really the 3 levels around our organization, understanding the strategic mission. How does that become defined, redefined, and truly relevant to each and one of us? And in particular, how is that really impacting the next level, which are our studios, and thinking about projects, services. Again, is it synchronous or asynchronous? Are we building upon what we know, or are we beginning to look at what may be, helping to define what really matters, again, to not only the organization, but an organization like all of ours that serves others in terms of our business. And then from the individual to have something from a strategic mission to the groups they're part of, studios, and the individual. Culturally, are you full of part of something that really is creating and pushing this idea of almost a startup in terms of a mindset? And we're looking also at the shifts in the design profession, certainly big data and design, even super intelligence associated with what may be coming in the future with design and what's happening within the last few months, flattening a curve that they predicted that would be just a number of years, 5 or 6. So that's been exciting to watch and be part of. But global warming, certainly well-being, wellness is part of that. We're looking even at psychological impact and what that means to people, and certainly the health associated with that, social equity, diversity, justice, learning and architecture, even how learning environments are beginning to redefine what we think of as workplace, circular economy, again, not only from a global scale, but Tomas mentioned surround yourself with experts and think about what that means in terms of idea generation and certainly moving the ball in a major way forward. Artificial intelligence, hybridity, urbanity, and the more you watch, and as Tomas said, the more you're primed, the more you realize things are changing. Or they're by degrees or just wholesale thinking about something may be more significant than another, and that can happen in days. In terms of the singularity, exponential change, and really Kurzweil from Google talking about the singularity concept when truly the super intelligence, I think they're talking about artificial intelligence, the super intelligence will surpass in the year 2045 the global collective mind share of human beings. My guess is that'll happen sooner versus later based on what's happening. And then some of the things that we're really embracing and looking at, again, those things begin to ebb and flow based on what's happening, but we have our finger in some of these, we're up to the neck in others, and some of the things literally in the last week we're looking at as to what it means in terms of predictive analytics, the Internet of Things or the Internet of Everything, certainly machine learning. Those are pieces that we're starting to add to this puzzle that we believe are really important, and we need to make it our business to understand and be part of and hopefully lead some of those. So the innovation biome at Little is really around these 10 things. We're looking at really this idea of spark, the entrepreneurial spirit, this startup mindset in each and every one of us. It's really a spirit that we have a responsibility to push not only ourselves, our teams, but the organization forward, and do so on behalf of what really matters for our clients. We talk a lot about symposiums, and we're trying to find, as Tomas said, ways to talk to our clients. In the past, it would be in person. Right now, we're using mind mapping and various platforms where we can do something very similar virtually. Always research, but research that's really built around action. So it's not research for research's sake. It's quick, it's agile, it's at a velocity that we haven't realized before, and that's really exciting. Again, the synchronous, asynchronous, inline, kind of asynchronous, kind of getting wobbly, which a lot of people have concerned around, and that goes back to that McKinsey, what business leaders, executives are afraid of, not being able to have predictive knowledge to understand what that means. Experience mapping, interdisciplinary. We really believe in this idea and this opportunity around transdisciplinary teams, connected, one room, when thinking. Again, kind of this the circular economy coming together, whether it's in your firm or your city. It really goes back to some of the things with transdisciplinary discipline. The idea of project excellence and obviously evidence-based design, where we're looking at what is really important to us is to continually to be on this curve of to learn, unlearn, and truly relearn. To not be able to do that, you know, we would say that's the illiterate of the future, not the ABCs, but the ability to truly stay in this curve of being able to learn, unlearn, and relearn.
Yeah, so this is kind of our attempt to do that, right? JT, I think this is yours too.
So that's right. This is our attempt. So again, the three factors. So our strategic mission, results beyond architecture, and what that means in terms of our organization. And again, back to how we put that into play with things like what we call Rethink, which is a funded opportunity, very much like an internal grant to do projects of whether they're competitions or ideas that are born from teams. But there are things that go back to solving real problems for clients, communities, and are truly tangible. Competitions in terms of studios begin to really bridge those things. So there's a lot of individuals that do that on their own as teams, but again, it's trying to find those opportunities that really make us better and help us think and collaborate and strategize in ways we haven't done before. Always looking at innovation and opportunities that are truly client focused, and both of those really marry towards that, as well as in our real work. Those things, that whether competition or Rethink, are always feeding how we start to address and think anew and create opportunities for our clients. In terms of the individual, at the center of that is thought leadership and subject matter experts, and in terms of what we have a program called our associate or senior associate. They have the opportunity and really a responsibility to have an initiative that they're able to articulate and really helps add to the dimension that they're bringing in terms of just being their best, but how it makes us all better. And then another funded opportunity we call Lace Up, where individuals or teams are bringing these ideas to the table. And again, those are funded opportunities that last a year. Again, another grant.
Yeah, and obviously everybody has their own ingredients. We'll show you very quickly a few of the ones we're doing in terms of symposiums, reaching out to clients, and clients being both clients and users in what teachers want, understanding that from a series of teachers. We're doing what students want out of their living experience in college dormitories, and these are kind of we've been looking at as well at the change of learning. And let me go back one second. The thinking about learning and shifting of learning, and how we are implementing those things in various opportunities throughout the United States. And that's being born out of thought leadership, how we start thinking about lace-ups. This was a project created by an individual of how to better integrate engineering and architecture in our firm, and how to be looking at ROI in all of our projects through new technologies. And our Center for Building Performance was born out of this idea from one individual in a fairly entrepreneurial kind of way. We have done rethinks in terms of rethinking, and via winning some of these international competitions, we've been able to push our agenda of knowledge, of thinking, of priming ourselves to when we are ready to go into a project where we're ready with all that knowledge, right? So these are 3 projects that we'd created in our past. The 3 of them were international winners of innovative zero energy or zero positive designs. 2 of them for Architecture Zero international competition. But that led to a lot of knowledge that was implemented at the first Zero Energy School we just finished last August in Florida, where we implement zero energy understanding to an extremely harsh climate like the southeast of the United States, where humidity is a big issue. But it's not only that, it's also an immersive learning component. So we're able to bring this diverse knowledge into one project in an extremely successful way where kids can learn for the future, and through those typologies. And also through individual grassroots competitions, students and new interns in our studios kind of implementing ideas about the future of sustainability, workforce development in Africa through international school design competition in Malawi. We're also looking at evidence-based design and how we implement thought leadership, but then how we go back and evaluate it. like we've done at McNair Middle School in Fulton County Schools in Florida, in Atlanta, where we look at data and how we take all that data to push forward over the next design. So thinking and learning as we progress. And initiatives from like another lace up from our employees thinking about the importance of Power BI and how we can automate our design process. And the last one I wanted to share quickly is the BRAINWARE research project, which is about learning in the brain, and it kind of started with a question: what if you could know what is happening to your clients' brains as they experience your designs? In our case, we're looking at that in terms of our students, and we're using an emotive BRAINWARE technology, EEG, BRAINWARE technology that can find emotions and they graph emotions of students as they go through a learning process. These are the 6 emotions that happen there, and that can be tracked, that can be seen, that can be experienced, as we did in one of the case studies. This obviously is for a different presentation, but we were able to track, like in this case, a student in various situations and be able to, as you can see on the laptop, understand when they get more exciting, where do they get more stressed in that process. So again, we're trying to do first-run research to inform us about the customization of education in the future. So again, we would end up with these questions again, and this would become the Q&A. So again, as we open this up, the idea is how innovative is your organization, how innovative is your team, how innovative are you? And we open a little bit to Q&A, and let me review some of the questions that have been asked.
So Tomas, I'll throw one out to you. Here, I have it up.
Sure.
So a good question is how do you keep innovating without burning out? So much continual creativity needs time for regeneration.
Well, I mean, I think it's back to the people, right? I mean, I think in my opinion, your people are the ones that are yearning for this, that do not see the problems of yesterday or the solutions of today as the solutions for tomorrow. So it's a mindset. I think there was a slide we didn't include here, but innovation is a frame of mind. We need to be thinking that every day we need to be innovative. I don't think that the solutions we did yesterday, they may last for a while, but at some point they will stop being relevant. And whether it's because of sustainability, because of COVID, because of social justice, in my opinion, I think you need to be constantly thinking innovatively, and it is a mindset, and it's hard, and it's not simple, but I think it starts with the people that you have in your institution or your corporation to bring all these ideas up, and having the humbleness as a leader in a company to understand that and to help facilitate that and give the opportunity of these innovative components to come to the marketplace and let the marketplace dictate. Many of the ideas we come up with are not great, and the marketplace tells us that. We to keep moving on to the next one. But it's an interesting question. I don't know, JT, you may have an answer for that too.
I think that's true, and it may build on another question, and this may give you a chance, Tomas, to get in the Q&A real quick. But the question is there anything you would tell a recent graduate, interior design or architecture, ? Many had positions in place and now are not working or working remotely from home for their firms. Also, any suggestions to us as educators? You know, the thing that comes to mind, I think, is something Tomas was touching on, and we touched on and think a lot about, is the ability just to be primed, and I think that's whether you're you know, employed now, working from home, you know, you're an educator or, you know, senior, junior, but it's just being aware of what's happening, and hopefully your opportunity to begin to have a position in that. It's not necessarily to say that someone has to agree with where you're landing, but to be informed, to read, to be part of programs like NeoConnect's putting on, and many others that you may have been part of. I think to find that network as well, whether it's through your university, it may be even as educators, you begin to find those intersectional opportunities, this asynchronous opportunity to maybe not assume things are necessarily going to stack up and be aligned, that they're a little more wiggly, but just find those those opportunities to put yourself in a position to bring something to the to the table. So if you're working today, whether it's at home or a physical location, your recent graduate that had an internship that unfortunately vaporized within minutes, moments, it still is an opportunity to understand that coming out of this, that and we will come out of it, that hopefully you're in a position and you're prepared and very much aware as to what's happening, and hopefully how the world is going to change. And I think ultimately from from emerging professionals in particular, they always bring something that Tomas and I don't necessarily have or see coming. And it's kind of a robust, enthusiastic, unwavering optimism that makes us all better. And hence, when we talk about flat organizations, is the realization to be part of, build your career around employers and institutions. If you're teaching, where you're learning, that really are in sync with that are true complements, and want you to help redefine what will be, and how that begins to impact hopefully your clients and their clients.
There's another question here. How do you see equity principles, racial, JEDI, BIPOC, empowerment, accessibility, community engagement, diversity, BLM now? Well, fantastic question. And I think this is exactly the prime moment for diversity to really become the key element, right? For us, that diversity is what brings diversity to ideas, diversity to voices. And it's only by hearing those voices that we can truly understand a challenge from a different point of view. I equate all this always to traveling. When you do things in your country, but then you travel somewhere else and you see that they do things equally well, but in a different way, you realize that there is a different point of view. And that opens your mind to understanding that you can solve a problem from multiple points of view, and that your point of view may be a limited point of view. So beyond the social component, I think it's just the smartest thing a company can do right now is increases diversity and kind of the community engagement. Be an amazing listener for the real true problems out there. Because then we're problem solvers by nature. That's what the design education has taught us, to be problem solvers. So if we truly understand that problem, and goes a little bit back to the question that you just answered about what kind of recent graduate do right now, understand the problem very well, truly dig in problem seeking, so that you can then bring in your creative hat and try to solve it. And companies are looking, left and right are looking for this. So I encourage you to stay very optimistic, look at the opportunities out there. And I know it's hard if you don't have your job right now, but stay optimistic, stay on top of learning, and take every living second you can to learn as much as you can, and be open, and go to places with that kind of attitude of, I can help, I can do this, I can do that. And what if we look at it this way instead? There's a question to what is brainwriting and what is synchronous, asynchronous within that. So very good. One thing we're doing right now, we reached out to clients. For example, we reached out to one of our clients, actually it's 4 clients, library systems in different counties. And we've invited all of them to come into a group map. Basically, we pose questions about the status of libraries today as a typology. And we're going to have a session actually this afternoon for them to be able to write in answers to those questions. At the end of an hour, we have about 250 to 300 answers to those questions, which give us a really strong pulse of what is happening in the industry, on the mindsets of our library clients. If we kind of understand that, we kind of put ourselves in their shoes. And it's harder to do on a brainstorming session when people are talking, because usually the same people that talk are the ones that keep on talking. In a brainwriting session, people write, and it's so much more equitable and anonymous in a way, even though you can see the names of the people, but we're able to truly see the kind of the essence, the anxiety that these folks are dealing with right now, and where should we spend our energy really focusing on. And synchronous, asynchronous, because we do it in 1 hour, but it could be done later. You're invited to come later as a client or as a potential library system and add to those comments. The good thing about it too is that if I write a comment that people are interested about, they can write comments upon comments, right? So they can embellish that potential solution with additional ideas. What if we do this and this and this? And that tends to be a pretty powerful experience for us. So we found that great value of staying connected with our clients while doing that too.
Great, Tomas. I believe we're at time. So just a quick thank you to everyone that took the time today to join us. As Tomas said when we were getting ready, typically we're used to being able to feed off folks, but we're fed off your questions and just the thoughts in the chat in particular, as well as the questions. So that was really nice. There's questions that we did not get the opportunity to answer, and we'd be more than happy. Again, our emails are at the bottom, the foot of this thank you page. So please reach out if you'd like, and would love to stay in touch or connect, and certainly answer anything that you have burning. And again, we mentioned the idea with students. Anyone that through these programs, hopefully you're increasing your network and those that can support and help. So again, Tomas and I are willing to do all we can to support all of you out there.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for having us today.
Yeah, thank you.
It was a pleasure.
Yeah, pleasure.
Tomas and JT, thank you for this very thought-provoking and very inspirational presentation. We really appreciate you sharing your expertise with us today. And thank you everyone who joined us. Please join us tomorrow for Hospitality's Next Breakthrough in the Workplace. Have a great day and stay well. Bye-bye.
Great.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.